Welcome to this brief video showcase of my Shockwave Totem Hierophant build. Thanatos Gaming here, and I wanted to show off this build because I think it's one of the best uses of the Astral Projector ring, and it accomplishes some really good DPS, convenience, and clear speed. So the purpose of the video is just to give a gameplay showcase that will accompany my written guide. You can find a link to that in the description. But first off, Shockwave Totem, what is it? The skill summons a totem which casts a spell dealing physical damage in an area of effect nova, which becomes relevant in a moment, and up until recently it's been completely out of the meta. In fact, I expect it to continue being out of the meta, maybe back sometime, I don't know, I remember Talisman League maybe. Shockwave Totem was briefly a popular skill. I remember I had a character, it was a witch that played crit Shockwave Totem. But since then it's been completely justifiably forgotten about because the skill has modest DPS and a pretty weak base crit chance, which makes it very difficult to scale, and it's 100% physical. Typically scaling, you would want to convert it to elemental to benefit from penetration and other sorts of damage bonuses, which was very hard to do relative to the investment required, so justifiably no one particularly wanted to do it. What changed in the 3.12 Heist League is there's now an alternate quality gem, the Divergent Shockwave Totem, which based on quality will convert 40% of its physical damage over to cold, and with that, it's now possible with only a small extra investment in passive tree and gear in order to convert 100% over to cold, and then we're able to double dip off of hatred and scale that with supreme ego. If that all sounds like just a bunch of words and doesn't make any sense to you, I'd encourage you to read my guide discussing exactly how that works. I've done 2 other videos covering how this same scaling strategy works with Glacial Cascade, and so I don't want to repeat it all right here for people who may have already seen those. But the gist of it is, if you have a skill that starts with 100% physical and you convert it to 100% of cold, then the hatred aura will double dip off of both the physical and the cold side, and if you have supreme ego for 50% more aura effect and you have some increased effect of hatred, you can get something like triple or quadruple of your base damage just by using hatred. It's very, very strong. And what I like about this build is it gets to take the same concept that I successfully used with the Glacial Cascade Totems build that I've used in the past 2 leagues and other people have had success with too. It basically takes that exact same concept but applies it to a new skill, Shockwave Totem, which in my opinion is a little bit better to use than Glacial Cascade. And Glacial Cascade got a rework in 3.12, and I haven't played with the skill myself except to very briefly test it out at low levels, and at a glance I like how it looks visually, but from a gameplay perspective I dislike how it's more positioning dependent. Yeah, that adds a new layer of skill to using this skill gem, but it's also kind of awkward because if you misplace it then suddenly you're doing a lot less damage. I also dislike that Glacial Cascade casts its spell in a directional manner, so it actually matters a lot how close or far you put it away from a boss. Shockwave Totem, on the other hand, doesn't matter at all where you place it because it just casts it all in a nova, does equal damage to everything near it. Totally foolproof, idiot-proof, perfect for playing lots and lots of Path of Exile. Where it gets really insane is where you add the Astral Projector ring, which causes nova spells to cast at the targeted location rather than around you, and in this case you being the totem. And Shockwave Totem does cast a nova, and so what Astral Projector does is effectively give it a massive range, and I'm hitting enemies with it that I can't even see on the screen yet, so it's possibly the longest range skill possible. If you cast your Shockwave Totem at the edge of the screen, they can clear up to a screen ahead of you, which if you're wanting to go through kind of safely, it's very, very good way to clear ahead of yourself. And this makes it just a super easy skill to use, and I like that Shockwave Totem has some inherent defensive benefits. You'll see that on some of the map bosses here, even in these red maps, when there's 4 different Shockwave Totems that are all knocking back a boss, it can basically stun lock them, even permanently freeze some bosses using the hypothermia support, making them effectively harmless. Big defensive advantage when you're running through maps. But just to give the fair take, I wanted to be very explicit about what the pros and cons of this build are relative to the Glacial Cascade version. So the pros of the Shockwave Totem version is for one, it's much more flexible on gear. You don't need to use the Soul Mantle and Kikazuru ring setup that you would typically do for a Spell Totem build, which personally I find kind of restrictive and kind of boring to always be stuck on those same 3 pieces of gear. For doing the Shockwave Totem, all you need is gloves with some some physical to cold conversion, and you're basically set for the rest of your gear. You can use whatever you want. The cons: the skill really takes off when you have the Astral Projector ring. Unfortunately, that is a league-specific item for Metamorph, and it tends to be rather expensive and difficult to trade for. The cost goes down as the league goes on because it's only needed by a few very specific builds, but still you'll be shelling out a large number of Exiles to get that ring, and while the Shockwave Totem is fine to play without it, it really does shine when you add that ring on as well. And that's about all I wanted to say about the skill. I think there have been some questions of people are wondering whether Astral Projector is worth trading for to try this out. The answer being yes, absolutely. Give it a try. But for now, that's all for me, and I hope to see you in the next video.